with the Ed Collaborative. She is an expert in secondary writing and reading instruction, including accelerated reading and writing instruction for multilingual students and those learning in urban environments. Currently, Julia is a teacher librarian for 5 schools on the Montbello campus within the far northeast region of Denver Public Schools. It is my pleasure to introduce a fellow librarian and my new friend, Julia Torres. A multicultural young adult renaissance, texts and strategies to engage and motivate every reader 6 to 12.
Okay, folks, I think I'm live. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that I am. My name's Julia, and I'm here in Montbello in far northeast Denver. And I'm really excited just to be able to talk about some things that matter a lot to me today, to be able to present some books to you that you might not know about and some that you do, and to just talk about some of the barriers that we face when it comes to going into schools with texts that might be considered non-traditional. And when we think about the types of things that we want children to read, I'd like to help folks expand their ideas of what's possible and yeah, just enter into some good conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and just get right to it. This is my very first time doing something like this. I've done a lot of Google Hangouts, but I haven't really done something like this before. So feel free to let me know on Twitter if I mess something up or go too fast or you have questions. Kristen's here to help me. She's the moderator, so she'll be filtering some questions through a chat that we share. I'm here at school in Montbello, like I said, and it's Saturday, and I just got a new library after a really long time. We haven't had a library in this building that serves 5 schools for over 7 years, close to 8 years. So it's really exciting to be in Montbello these days. There's new construction happening. The children are really excited about having their library back, and I'm really excited about the chance to serve them as their librarian. And I'm really happy to be here today to share all of that with you. So let's get to it. I'm going to try this out, sharing the presentation. Hopefully it works. All right, my presentation is called A Multicultural YA Renaissance, Texts and Strategies to Engage and Motivate Every Reader. And I chose that title very purposefully because I want folks to understand that we're living in times that are really beautiful. We're living in historic times where we have a lot of authors of color who are being published at astonishing rates. Some are producing between 3 and 4 books per year for not only students of color, but for everyone. And as a young person, I didn't really see myself represented in the books that were in school. I didn't have the opportunity to see books like The Poet X or other texts that had people who looked like me on the covers. Usually there were books that represented Black people from history, like Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King. I really didn't even know who Assata Shakur was until I got much older. So part of my work as a librarian and as a language arts educator is to help students reclaim history that has been taken from them, but also to help instill a sense of pride in them, help them understand that they're part of a legacy, that a lot of the things that they feel and the experiences that they have that have not been centered are the experiences and the lived realities of people who have come before them. So I'm really excited to share some of my favorite authors and book titles with you. And I'm honored to be a part of the Educator Collaborative. There's so many wonderful educators who have presented today. It blows my mind. And it is a huge honor to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with these people. And I'm so passionate about the fact that the EdCollab has allowed PD to be broadcast all over the world. I know that we have people who are in Brazil, and I just want to say, if I have some Brazilians out there, I miss you, I love you, and I have such a strong affinity for Brazilian educators because I know the struggle that a lot of them face, especially in public education. So anyway, back to my presentation. I'm just going to toggle back and forth here, and I want to show you a few reminders. Our hashtag is the EdCollab Gathering number 12. there is a space in between the G and the pound sign or the number sign. So just if you want to ask me any questions, I can't see your hands raised, so Kristen will have to help me. But if you have questions, please just ask them on Twitter using the hashtag. Make sure you put that space in between the G and the pound sign so that she can sort through and find them. And you can also tweet at me directly at JuliaAaron80. Also, this presentation is going to be made available later, so you can just kick it and relax and enjoy. You can take some notes if you want, but enjoy your coffee and just hang out with me. All right, so the first question that I have is, where in the world are you? And I have a poll that I have created. I'm going to try to click and see if we can go to it. And as soon as it is live, ooh, that's interesting. Okay. I don't know if it will show me, but anyway, you're going to go to the link that is pollev.com, then Julia Torres 095. And you can just click on a map, and I'll try to pull it up a little bit later, and it will show where in the world you are. I would love to see where everybody's located, because I like to not take it for granted that I'm speaking to an audience of all white educators in the United States. So if you could take a few moments to go there, that would be amazing. I'll try to pull up the responses here in a moment. Some of what I do is I try to inspire folks to critically intervene in a way that challenges and changes. This is a quote that myself and some other educators of color, Trish Abarvia, Lorena Herman, and Dr. Kimberly Parker, we have started a project called Disrupt Text, where we have a Twitter chat in which folks come together and discuss ways that we can center authors and works that have been historically marginalized. So through our eyes, that is critically intervening in the types of texts that are taught in schools. And one of the things that I am doing these days as a librarian is trying to get students also to think about reading in different ways, because so many of them have had the tendency to think about reading as something that is for people who are purely academic, or they think that it's pretty boring. They think that if you are a reader, that means you pick up a book and you can read it from start to finish. So they don't really think about the fact that reading liner notes for, as we used to in the old days, for CDs and records, that counts. They don't think about the things like reading Instagram, long captions and essays on Instagram, that counts. They don't think about the fact that readers look very different today than they maybe have ever in history. And so in order to intervene not only in the types of things that we're putting in front of children, but in the ways that they see themselves, it's really important that we support people in seeing themselves as readers, no matter what that looks like. Okay, I am going to go back to our presentation, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the way that students in middle grades might see themselves. I think that the students I work with here in Montbello, they typically self-identify as readers in grades 6 through 8. I ask a classroom full of 6th graders, do you like to read? Do you see yourself as a reader? And almost everybody raises their hands. They can clearly explain the types of books that they like to read, and they have regular habits of reading for pleasure. There was a little kid that I was speaking to earlier this week. His name was Romeo, and I did a read aloud in class, and he told me he didn't like the book that I read aloud to him, and he told me exactly why. And it was such a great conversation because he was able to have this dialogue back and forth about the types of things that he likes to read. And it was a really different experience than what typically happens when I go into a room full of 12th graders in my particular environment. So I just want to quickly run down the list. You can take a screenshot or a picture of this, or I know that most of the folks who are here are probably really well versed in doing book talks, but I want to just let you know that this is your kit. If you go into a classroom with students and your goal is to help them find books that they might love to read, this is your kit. These are all the authors, not all, but these are some of the authors and the titles that you're going to want to bring with you into the classroom so that you can support students in developing a lifelong love of reading, especially middle grade students. So what I usually do is I will go into the classroom, and I have my book truck with me, so I'll just grab what I usually use. But I'll go into the classroom and I will ask for folks to tell me whether they identify as readers or not. And then I'll bring some books and I will say, okay, so based on what you can see of the cover and based on what's on the inside flap, which one would you like me to read aloud? And then I will read whichever one they chose. And then I'll ask them, based on what I read so far, would you keep going? Would you want to finish this book? And then they'll give me a thumbs up to the side or thumbs down. And the exciting thing about it is that most of the time with these books that are being born, for lack of a different way of saying it these days, students are engaged from the get-go. And they're really excited about the different ways that authors are helping them be seen by putting their faces on the cover and using their language. So I really like to highlight that when I first go into a classroom, and with the goal, of course, of getting kids to take some interest in reading. So let's go on to the next slide. Some tips that I like to tell teachers about are that author videos are available on most publisher websites and YouTube. You could hear authors talking about their books, which was not really something that happened in my day. So I really like the fact that so many of the authors that I talk about and like to share with students are living today. Books with movie tie-ins get students excited about field trips. Who doesn't like the idea of a field trip? So I love to talk to kids about the possibility of going on a field trip or having a movie night hosted in the library, reading the book first. That gets them really excited. I used to teach lit to film, and that was always a really popular class. So there are going to be a lot of possibilities for that coming up too, especially with The Hate You Give, which is another book that I'm going to talk about in a moment. The right series can help someone become a reader for life. I know that most of you are probably familiar with Jason Reynolds, but if you're not, you should be. He's written a book for everyone. He's written the book for everyone, but he's also written many books. And it's not happened yet where I haven't been able to find one that would connect with that a student would connect with. Some students connect with all of them, but I think that it's a really special thing that we can say we have many series. Nick Stone is coming out with a new middle grade series. Kwame Alexander has a middle grade series. So we have so many series that can get students excited about one book, and then they will want the next one and the next one and the next one. And then that leads to the possibility of becoming a reader for life. So don't underestimate the value also of ebooks and audiobooks. I had a lot of success using audiobooks last year in my English classes, and I've been using Overdrive to show my students about ebooks. And the middle grade students are really excited because there are some collections that are built into Overdrive. So if they want spooky stories, then they can go and look at the Spooky Stories collection. And I think that that kind of curates things and personalizes the experience a little bit for them. So one of the things that I think it's really important to think about when we are looking at middle grades versus high school is the fact that middle grade students really just came from a heavy, intensive push toward literacy in elementary school. And so in grade 6, in grade 7, and sometimes in grade 8, if we can manage to keep that momentum going with their love for reading, then that's half the battle. But once you get into high school, something that often happens is people already assume that our students have reading lives, that are strong and ingrained. They have healthy reading habits and practices. And sometimes that's not true. There's also often shame and stigma that gets really embedded within our students if their reading abilities or levels are not where they're led to believe they should be. And so those are some of the challenges that ninth grade students face, among others. There's a heavy push in middle school to have students just have fun and enjoy being at school. But then in high school, there's this heavy push and transition toward college preparedness and passing tests. So there's a big cultural shift that happens there. And along the way, a lot of times the love for reading gets lost because it becomes something that students do performatively because they want to please us and they want us to be happy and then they want to get the grades. It's really difficult in the current system that we're in to move away from rewarding someone for doing something with the grade as a carrot. And so that's why a lot of times we try to talk about removing levels, removing stipulations like you can only read texts that meet this level of complexity, because when you're putting boxes around what someone can read, or when you're literally putting books into a box and saying you can only read these books, that's sort of artificial. It's not actually the way that going into a library or going into the world of books works. So I'm going to go a little bit more into talking about high school students and their experience with reading. We're having a Percy Jackson party in the library for 6th graders week after next, and I'm really excited about it. They're going to watch the movie. They're going to eat blue food. They just read the first book, so I'm really excited about that. But my high school students are going to be going on a field trip to go see The Hate U Give. And I am also very excited about that. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that here. In high school, students don't necessarily self-identify as readers. They can't clearly explain the types of books that they like to read a lot of times. And when I go into a 9th grade or 10th grade classroom and I ask students to tell me whether they like to read or not, I see a lot of faces looking like I don't think I like to read. And so in my mind, I think, well, you maybe haven't found what you like to read. But at one time, you probably did like to read. So let's figure out what happened in between elementary and middle school to make you sort of fall off of your love for reading. And then we think about this idea of performative reading, where students are going through the motions of reading books. Often these are the classics. They're going through the motions, but they're not really that excited about what we are asking them to read because of the tasks connected to the reading. A lot of times, the tasks that we ask them to do with the reading reinforce the idea of performative scholarship rather than true intellectual curiosity. So I want to you can take a screenshot or take a picture of some of these titles and authors. I had so much success with Long Way Down and The Poet X by Liz Acevedo last year in AP English Lit and Lang. It was wonderful. And The Hate U Give has been going over so well with students in grades 9 through 12. First of all, because the read aloud always hooks them from the beginning. The very beginning of The Hate U Give it grabs you right away. And so a lot of students will say things like, oh, I saw the movie trailer for that, or they'll laugh at the appropriate points, and I'll know that they're kind of vibing with it because of the language that is used. We get into some conversations about book banning and about censorship and about the ways that adults try to put controls on what students can read or what is considered worthy of academic study. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but all of these books on this list, that is my kit. As I said before, in showing you the middle grade titles, this is what I use when I go into classrooms and I want students to, get interested in books and consider coming to the library. That's my kit. Those are the books that I use. So I will just reach over to my book truck here and show you these. I will read the beginnings of these. And with The Poet X, as soon as people see the cover, they're drawn in. And as soon as I say the word Xiomara, my bilingual students are like, wait a minute, I know a Xiomara, or I've heard of that name before. They're drawn in. As soon as I show people the beginning of Long Way Down and I read it to them, they're emotionally drawn in. The classroom goes silent. So these are things that we have to really take seriously. I think you have this moment, you have 5 to 10 minutes to really grab someone's attention in those situations. And there are some students who, as soon as you say, I'm the librarian, they're like, oh no, and they have some kind of negative association. But the majority, I think, really want to be open to the message that there are books out there for them. So that's something that I'm really working on with 9th through 12th grade students, and that I think all people in all environments should consider when we're looking at these books that are non-canonical works. One of the most exciting things is that these authors are still alive. So you can reach out to them and have an interactive experience with your students, and it can be a beautiful thing. So let's go back to the presentation. I always start with the cover art, as I showed you with The Poet X. Optics matter. The covers are very intentionally designed, and it sets a tone or a mood. So I'll show the students the cover and give them a chance to kind of talk out. What does it make you feel? What do you think about it? What other authors have quotes on the cover? The movie tie-ins, again, get people really excited about possible field trips. And then we have a lot of students who say that independent reading is something that they wish they had. I know what it feels like as a teacher to have administrators tell me you are not allowed to do independent reading. And there, believe it or not, are still many places where people are not allowed to just let children read in the classroom. So that is still that right to read, and that right to read something that you want is still something that has to be fought for. So that's, I can't really emphasize that enough, that we do still have to fight for that. That's not a given in all environments. Again, don't underestimate the value of ebooks and audiobooks. I had such great experiences with Long Way Down, which Jason Reynolds reads himself, and with The Poet X, which Liz Acevedo reads herself. The children absolutely loved it. I had one kid come into class and say, "Miss, this is all I want to do today. I just want to hear the book. That's all I want to do. Please tell me that's all we're doing." And that was such a beautiful moment. And I was just really happy to hear him say that. And that was in regards to The Poet X. So with that said, I do want to talk a little bit about the types of books that I have chosen. They intentionally are narratives that are multifaceted with complex characters. So when we are looking at diverse reads, it's really important to take a look at what you've got and make sure you're not falling into the trap of presenting a hollow perspective of someone's reality. So we don't only want to have stories of being African American that center around the civil rights movement or slavery. We don't only want to have stories about Native Americans or Asian cultures that talk about mythology and present all people from the past as still being a part of even though ancestors are an important part of Native identities and cultures. I just want to say that I think it's really important to make sure that we're showing all aspects of humanity, because too often we get really trapped in presenting cultures that we are not as familiar with as very black and white or hollow, and we don't look at the full measure of what it means to be human. Whereas white culture that is put forth as or centered or dominant, we see all different aspects of whiteness throughout society in movies, commercials, TV, cartoons, comics, as superheroes, all of that good stuff. So I think that's really important to mention. Navigating back to the presentation, because I could talk about that forever. Okay, so I have another poll, and I don't know if this one will work. It's the same link as before. Do you have to go through an approval process before you can teach new books in your school? That's something that I would love for folks to consider. Do you have to go through an approval process before you can teach new books in your school? Some of these approval processes are really complicated, and they're kind of racist when you are required to purchase members of a certain book for all of the board, or to go through conversations and have everybody sign off on things just to show that a book is worthy of academic study. All of the people that are having the conversations are adults. And we're not really looking to students to incorporate their voices in the conversations about whether a text is worthy of academic study. And when I say that sometimes these text adoption processes are racist, I say that because somehow textbooks get adopted that say that slaves were workers, which implies that they were paid for their services, which we know they were not. So that's not okay. That is okay to adopt a textbook like that, but it's not okay to have a book like The Hate U Give or All American Boys in schools. That's problematic. And whenever someone says there's a process, you can't teach this book because there's a process, that often means that adults want to complicate the process of a child falling in love with a book, which is the simplest thing ever. So anyway, I'm not sure if the poll worked or not, but I would love to hear from you about whether you are required to go through an adoption process. And later on, at some point, I'd love to have some conversations about how comfortable people feel with challenging that process, because I really do think that that's what it's going to take. It's going to take some teachers and students together saying, we deserve the right to read, and we would like to not have folks who are not actually in our environment controlling what we're doing, because so often folks also want to put a bubble around children and protect them from ideas or cultures that they think would be harmful, or experiences that they think would be harmful. And as much as I respect everyone's desire to protect children, I think that that winds up being really harmful. And what we wind up doing is creating adults who have no notion of the lived realities of people who they meet. And so it just puts more barriers up between us. It's not helpful. So moving along, I'm getting notes here that I need to start the poll, so I don't know if that worked, but I have some other important things that I would like to share with you. So I'm going to go forward. Socratic seminars are a way that I like to encourage students to own conversations about books in the classroom. I'm sure many of you, all of you, do Socratic seminars, you know, being that it's named after Socrates. It's something that has been around for a really long time. I have students create open-ended text to self, text to world, universal theme, and follow-up questions. So they create all of those questions before they go in. And we have several different ways that we do the Socratic seminar. The constructivist listening, and I'm not sure, I don't think that that link worked for you, but the constructivist listening, that link will work once this slideshow is downloaded to a place on the EdCollab where you can pull from it for yourself. But I can show you that the National Equity Project has something called constructivist listening dyads, and they have a structure there for developing listening skills. Because when we get into a seminar, a lot of times the impulse is to speak for a grade. And so it's really important to balance out speaking with listening. This idea of back channel conversations, again, that's a link that you can click later and it will take you to a document where my students were having a back channel conversation, meaning there's the inner fishbowl group, then there's the outer group that is having a conversation as well in a shared Google document. And I'll talk to you more about that later. But this link here, once it goes live, you'll be able to see the types of comments that my students made about the poet X. And then language supports are another thing that I add to my Socratic seminars to help students become independent. So it's not me jumping into the Socratic seminar constantly trying to bait them for more conversation and more information, but it's empowering them to actually be able to have real intellectual conversations about the text using academic language. That's really the goal there. So here's a little quick demonstration, and I hope that this video works. I'm going to just show you a video of me talking about how I set up the classroom to do this. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm just going to share my entire screen with you. I don't know. Okay, here you go. All right, so here I am in the library, and I just want to take you through a couple of things quickly. When we talk about seminars in my class, there are a few different ways that I do it. One of the ways is to have an inner circle and an outer circle, and the kids on the outer circle, they have Chromebooks, and they're all in a shared Google Doc, which I'll show you here momentarily. The kids on the inner circle, I usually do no more than 6, and they will have their book, and then they have questions that they have prepared that are text to self, text to world, a open-ended question, which can have a variety of answers. We don't do closed-ended questions anymore because they weren't really leading to further discussion, and we'll do a text-dependent question. So another thing that I like to do is place these around. These are some questions that come from this box. It's called discussion cards. Nice and creative theme there, but very useful resource. If people want more information about how to get those later, I can let you know. But it looks like this. There are 4 or 5 different cards that look like this. on the front, and then on the back, they have a series of sentence starters. So I find that these are really helpful, especially for my second language learners. Another one is pose a question, and then on the back, they'll have more sentence starters. Again, my students were in AP English language, so they would usually come prepared with questions already, but I want to get them used to backing up one another's thinking. And so they tried to learn to support each other in a way that is authentic. A lot of times when we have students who come from similar backgrounds and who use similar language structures, they get used to just saying, I agree because, I agree because, I agree because. And we want to try to avoid having that type of discussion because it's not really a discussion. That's just people sitting around agreeing with one another. So I usually have the kids sit at the table and it'll have an inner circle. As you can see, I'm walking around and we will have an outer circle. The kids with the Chromebooks are in the outer circle. And one of the things that the inner circle folks do is they can also use these constructive conversation skills posters that I place, they're placemats actually, that I just place in front of them for additional support. They have things like negotiating, creating something. So what do we need to do in order to create more ideas of what the author did in order to support imagery? Or how can you clarify what you said? And so I really try to help build those language skills with these constructive conversation skills posters and with the cards. So here in a moment, I am going to take you through what the documents look like a little bit more closely so that you can see examples of those. The students really like the seminars. They hate them at first, but they really like them because it gives them the opportunity to express their own unique viewpoints about literature. I know that Socratic Seminar isn't something particularly new, but I really like the way that I do it because it allows for that back channel conversation to happen, which is something that happens in real life, right? We always have different things going on in the world that we're talking about. And then there are all the side conversations or back channel conversations that people are having. So the kids in the outer circle are having a back channel conversation while the kids on the inner circle are having a discussion and they're interacting and kind of bouncing off of each other and learning each time they do it how to be more natural with it. And then I'll sit over here. Usually I'll be in a stool or in a chair and I'll sit behind some students and I'm not even really saying anything. I'm just over here with my laptop and I'll sit in a chair and I'll just be listening. So I'm over here taking notes and then the kids are sitting there having conversation. And if it ever gets kind of stalled, then I'll ask for them to elaborate on their viewpoints or to provide text evidence, or I'll remind them that there are a few things that happened in the last round that were really, really good. And they might want to jump off of those ideas. Now, something else that often happens is that folks will be on the outer circle and they will hear something that someone says and they will want to jump in. So I always try to leave one or two chairs empty so that people can join the conversation from the outer circle if they want to. Another thing that's really important is to make sure that the group is balanced in terms of a variety of opinions and views. So if you have one female participant and all the rest are male, sometimes that can throw off the dynamics of the conversation. So I try to be really cognizant of those dynamics and to help them do that as well. Again, first semester, this is really something that I'm doing a whole lot of hand-holding with, but then second semester, things go really well and they usually wind up being able to lead conversations independently without me. So that's a quick little demo on how I do Socratic Seminar. I'll give you more information and show you some documents here in a moment. All right. I'm good. Oh my goodness. Okay. I don't know what YouTube is doing. Okay. That was crazy. Okay. Going through a lot of things, clicking all over the place, but I'm glad that you got to see that video. And I have a few videos of some kids that I want to show you, talking just quickly about things that they like to do. And I don't really know how to navigate YouTube that well, but the links again are in my presentation. So as you go through the presentation later on, when it's uploaded to the EdCollab website, you can click away, save away, download, go to the YouTube channel, do whatever feels good to you. So I see that I am getting close to the end, I want to make sure that I show you the students and that I empower you with some resources to be able to advocate for the right to read and for children's rights to have access to these amazing texts. Oh, and I want to tell you too that, as I said before, these authors are alive now. So if you're in class and there's a question and you tweet at one of them, they may just write you back right in that moment. And that's something that was not possible when I was alive. And I am still alive when I was in school. So I just want you to understand that, like, the authors make themselves accessible to us intentionally because they love the kids and because they write for the kids and because they are such wonderful people that they want to be as accessible as possible to the students. So they will Skype into your school, they will come visit, they will tweet back at you, they will email you back. I had an incredible experience earlier this year where Tomi Adeyemi sponsored our classroom and we got copies of the Poet X, and that's why I was actually able to teach it. And then Liz Acevedo Skyped in during lunch one day. She was very kind and answered questions for almost an hour with my students. So just know that these people are real, that they want to meet us halfway in communicating with our students and helping them to discover a love of reading. They write the stories for them, and it's a really beautiful thing to be able to be a part of it. So let's go ahead and hear from some more students. All right. Let's see, YouTube, what we're doing. Okay, go back to this. Those are my kids, inner circle, outer circle. If you don't have Chromebooks, this is what it's like to go from famine to feast. We now have Chromebooks. I have 3 computers. I have 2 smart boards. We got whiteboards all over the place. I had, as you saw, a swivel cam. This was not the case just a couple of years ago. So if you don't have that much technology, there are still ways to do this inner circle, outer circle thing and the back channel conversations, and I would be happy to go over them later. This was one of the most incredible paired text discussions I've ever witnessed. You'll see notes from the paired discussion. Those are tone wheels in front that I use as language supports to help folks talk about the emotions or tone behind certain passages in the work. Here are some student voices. We're going to see if these will play. Okay, I think that you could hear her, but you probably couldn't see her. So I'm going to fix this. Now screen share doesn't want to cooperate. Okay. Okay, I'm going to share my entire screen with you, so you're going to see everything.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I don't know what that is. Okay. Now we'll go to Tyler. Okay. Whoa. All right. And of course, Kavanaugh has to make an appearance. Okay. So let's go back to our presentation. One of the things that is so important to me is getting continual feedback from my kids. So I always ask them, is this working for you? How much time do you need in the seminar? And then I also ask them, do you like this book? If not, why not? Are you excited about hearing from this author? Would you like for me to tweet a question to them? There's a lot of different ways that you can seek their input in the process. And I think it's really important for us to humble ourselves enough where if you're reading a book, for example, like The Poet X, and you're not fluent in Spanish, so there are parts of it that you don't understand, it's okay to learn from your students. And Paulo Freire talks about that powerful moment when the teacher becomes a student and the student becomes the teacher. And I can wholeheartedly agree that that's a beautiful thing when we allow ourselves enough humility to be in that space where we can ask them questions and then actually listen to the answers. So I would love to show you these different resources that you can use to advocate and then see if there's any time for Q&A. I'm going to ask my moderator here how much time I have left. If you have any burning questions, please feel free to tweet them out using the hashtag. It looks like I have 3 minutes. So I will be looking for any questions in the chat. Okay, people are asking about tone wheels. So you can find them on Pinterest, but you can also get them off of Google. You just put in tone wheel and you're going to see all different kinds of options. I like to print out the black and white ones and then I'll laminate them. And I have them in the library in a section that says reading tools because typically they use them to find out more about how to describe tone. And I did not make the tone wheels. I found them. Somebody else is the originator of the tone wheel, I suppose, but they have them in art class and they use them for using colors to try to communicate emotion. This is something that you can use in a lot of different content areas. For my purposes, especially in the seminar, I like for students to say in this particular passage, I feel like it connects best with this tone. And it just helps give them more expansive language to talk about emotions. So yeah, and then we use them in writing as well to be able to have some enhanced language. It starts in the middle with really simple emotions, and then it uses more words as you go outer to talk in a more complex way about emotions. Okay, folks want to know about the discussion cards box set. So the discussion cards box set, I can show, I will make sure that I put a picture of that on my page with the Educator Collaborative, but it was purchased by the school and there is one for math and there is also one for language arts. Those are the only two that I've seen. And essentially, there are many different cards within that box, but they are all in sets. And there are 4 different ways that you can bump up the conversation. It sort of gives kids a way to extend the conversation beyond question and answer. Okay, I'm trying to think about what other questions folks might have. I really want to show you quickly the resources for advocacy because I feel like those are really important. So Disrupt Text is a project that, like I said, that I've been working on with 3 other incredible, phenomenal educators, women of color, who you can participate in the Disrupt Text chat, but you can also look on our website for ideas about how to disrupt the traditional literary canon. Project Lit community is phenomenal. We got Project Lit Montbello going. We are reading 9 books this year for middle grade and 10 books for high school. And those lists are available on my Twitter, but I can also make them available to people later. The kids are very excited. I have 90 people signed up for Project Lit at this point. NCTE and ILA, those links will take you directly to the advocacy pages for advocating for kids to read books that have been banned or challenged. We Need Diverse Books is phenomenal. That link will take you directly to an advocacy page that will help you advocate for using these books in your school. Same thing with ALA and YALSA. I have links that will take you directly to their advocacy pages. And Epic Reads is just fun. It's just pure fun. So you need to explore that site if you do not know about Epic Reads yet. And it is different from Go Epic, which is for elementary students. So that was really quick there. I don't know how much more time I have. I feel like I'm running out. You know, when you feel like the bell's gonna ring and you could just kind of feel it. I feel like things are happening here that, but I am going to be talking with Mari Kopany here shortly. So we'll be back and I'm super excited. So I think that this is it for my session, but please reach out to me on Twitter, via email, through the EdCollab website if you have any questions. I would love to talk more about all the things that I brought up, do some book talks. I do visit schools all the time. So please let me know if I can support you in any way. All right, I think that's it.
Julia, that was awesome. Again, we hope everyone will join us for the closing session with Julia and Mari in conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.